President Donald Trump has ordered a pause to all U.S. military aid to Ukraine, turning up the heat on Volodymyr Zelensky days after an Oval Office blow-up with the Ukrainian president. The decision affects deliveries of ammunition, vehicles and other equipment, including shipments agreed to when Joe Biden was president. Well, let's bring in Newzroom Africa's United States correspondent Simon Marks, who joins us now from Washington, D.C. So good afternoon from South Africa. Simon, I guess, nothing by President Trump surprises, especially these days, but a bit of arm twisting, perhaps, or is it something that you think is done?
Look, I think that's a really interesting question, Vuyo, because on the face of it, this suspension of arms shipments and military assistance to Ukraine, according to senior administration officials, is purely temporary. They just want to get some indication from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky following the drubbing that he received at the hands of Vice President J.D. Vance and President Trump in the Oval Office last Friday, that he's actually committed to peace in Ukraine. But it's very unclear what Volodymyr Zelensky has to do in order to persuade President Trump that he really wants to bring about an end to the Ukraine conflict. Because what Volodymyr Zelensky's position has been is that he's only going to sign away a significant chunk of his country's mineral wealth to the United States, as Donald Trump is demanding, if the Americans agree to underpin any peace negotiation and any peace agreement between Ukraine and Russia with American-backed security guarantees. That means military infrastructure by the United States being devoted to helping European and other peacekeepers on the ground make sure that this conflict doesn't flare up again. And at the moment, the position of the Trump administration is that they have no plans to provide any military security guarantees. President Trump says the mere presence of some Americans exploiting Ukraine's mineral wealth, they won't be military, but construction figures, geologists and the like, that's an automatic security guarantee, because he indicates that Vladimir Putin would understand the risks of attacking those American citizens. But Ukraine wants much more than that. And so this suspension of military aid is fueling suspicions here and in Europe that what Donald Trump is actually doing is moving the United States much closer to Vladimir Putin's Russia, parroting many of the things that Vladimir Putin says about the war in Ukraine. And of course, on the other side of the Atlantic in Europe, as they scramble to rearm and take a leadership role in bringing about peace in the Ukraine conflict, that is a deeply agonizing reality.
How has the news been received, especially by the Washington's political elite?
Well, certainly Democrats, of course, have excoriated President Trump for doing this. They absolutely hew to a time-honored backing of Ukraine, as it was espoused by President Joe Biden when he sat in the White House. For Republicans, it's a bit more complicated because some more orthodox Republicans from an older generation believe that the United States should solidly be backing Ukraine. So we saw Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska speaking on Friday and over the weekend about her sense of shame over the manner in which President Zelensky had been roughed up by the President of the United States and his Vice President. You've got others like Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, a bit of a Trump whisperer here, a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Normally, they stand shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine. He is instead bending the knee before Donald Trump, said he'd never been prouder of America's president. And then you've got the Make America Great Again brigade on Capitol Hill, who, of course, are cheering this determination by Donald Trump to do what he said he was going to do on the campaign trail and essentially abandon Ukraine.
Of course, he's been ruffling feathers for quite a bit. The Democrats are the Republicans rather are busy debating the issue of LGBTIQ rights as well at this point.
Yeah, so I mean, that's a very, very interesting separate conversation that is simultaneously taking place here as Republicans in some states, South Dakota already, several others preparing to do this, are trying to pass resolutions calling on the United States Supreme Court to reconsider its 2015 decision that legalized gay marriage in the United States, a landmark decision 10 years ago by the US Supreme Court. Now, the US Supreme Court can only reconsider a ruling if a new case is brought before it that challenges a ruling that is previously made. But certainly the Republicans are indicating that on social issues in the United States, as well as geopolitical issues, they are very much focused on delivering on Donald Trump's election victory in order to bring about wholesale change here. And one of the changes that many Republicans want to see is gay marriage in the United States again being outlawed.
Just generally, Simon, because I mean, this is what people here talk about all the time. How is the reception, to this like raft of orders, executive orders that President Trump has been signing? Other conversations around them, just broadly, what has come, to do, and how people have been reacting to his orders.
Yeah, look, I think it's important to understand that what Donald Trump is doing is governing as a super empowered authoritarian president in the White House. He hasn't sent a single bill to Congress yet. Everything is all being done by executive orders with a flourish of his executive pen, and he seems absolutely determined to push this idea of a unitary presidency being the absolute focal point for decision-making in the United States, unlike what the US Constitution says, which is that there are three co-equal branches of government: the president, Congress, and the courts. This president's not interested in that, and he is changing the character of American governance on a daily basis. There has been some pushback in individual communities all over the country. We've seen a number of elected Republican lawmakers facing furious crowds when they have returned to their home districts to hold town hall meetings. One of them just over the weekend literally abandoned a town hall meeting, walked out of it because there was so much opposition being voiced by voters to what Donald Trump is doing. But the real difficulty that Donald Trump's opponents face is that there's no coordinating figure here. The Democrats have absolutely disappeared from view. You can count on the fingers of one hand prominent Democrats who are putting their head above the parapet. They include Senator Bernie Sanders, the left-wing gadfly from Vermont. They include Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut. But to all intents and purposes, the Democrats have disappeared, simply hunkering down and assuming that in the 2022 midterm elections there will be some sort of corrective to all of this delivered by the electorate. The problem with that is you have to have an enormous amount of confidence that the midterm elections in 2026 are going to be run along traditional lines. And I think it's far from clear at the moment that the 2026 midterm elections or even the 2028 presidential election will organizationally necessarily look like all of the elections of the recent past that have preceded them.
But have things gotten to a point where people are starting to feel that what he has done via these executive orders amounts to a subversion of democracy?
Well, I think there's no question that that is the path upon which Donald Trump and many of his colleagues in his inner circle, including his de facto Prime Minister Elon Musk, are absolutely engaged. The notion that the richest man in the world is firing hundreds of thousands of civil servants without any accountability to Congress, closing organizations like the U.S. Agency for International Development. We think the Department of Education is about to be shuttered on Donald Trump's orders. I mean, these are congressionally funded organizations, and yet largely the White House, Mr. Musk and others are acting without any respect for court decisions, any reference to Congress whatsoever. We will see what sort of a reception Donald Trump receives tonight on Capitol Hill, because he'll be making his first address to a joint session of Congress since his inauguration and the beginning of his second term in office. A challenge for Republicans there, because he has so significantly subverted the role that Congress traditionally plays in the big decisions that are made here. And just within the last couple of hours, Donald Trump has taken to his own social media platform, Truth Social, to announce that all federal funding will stop in the United States for any college, school, or university that allows what he describes as illegal protests. Agitators, he says, will be imprisoned or permanently sent back to the country from which they came. American students will be permanently expelled or arrested.
Of course, I wanted to ask him also about the address, Donald Trump's address later on today to a joint session of Congress. Everyone's speculating about pronouncements that he may add to that withdrawal of aid for now, to assistance, rather military assistance to Ukraine. But of course, Simon Marks will be keeping a close eye on that address, and later on will be able to talk to us about it as well.